On the night of March 21, 1989, a massive Boeing 707 cargo jet, Transbrasil Flight 801, rumbled down the runway at Manaus International Airport in Brazil. It was a routine flight heading to São Paulo with a stop in Fortaleza. On board were a crew of 3. Captain José Eder de Oliveira, First Officer Paulo Cesar Lima, and Flight Engineer Elio Teixeira de Magalhães. Joining them were 3 authorized passengers, a mechanic and 2 off-duty pilots. The aircraft was loaded with nearly 25 tons of electronic equipment, placing it close to its maximum takeoff weight. The air was thick with the humidity of the Amazon night as the 4 powerful engines spooled up, pushing the vintage jet into the sky. For the first few moments, everything was normal. The plane lifted off runway 28 just before midnight. But within seconds, the routine flight would turn into a horrifying catastrophe, a story of cascading failures that unfolded with terrifying speed. As the 707 climbed through just 200 feet, a sudden jolt shook the cockpit. A fire warning illuminated the instrument panel for engine number 3, the inner engine on the right wing. Captain Oliveira immediately declared an emergency over the radio and began a left turn, hoping to circle back and land. But just 4 seconds later, the situation escalated dramatically. The fire warning for engine number 4, the outer engine on the same wing, also lit up. Now both engines on the right side were compromised. The pilots were grappling with a double engine failure on the same wing, a dire emergency for any aircraft, especially one this heavy and low to the ground. The control tower in Manaus heard the panicked report. Transbrasil 801, engine fire on number 3 and 4. It would be the last clear transmission they received. The massive aircraft, crippled and unbalanced, began to lose its battle with gravity. The decision to turn back was instinctive, but it sealed their fate. With 2 engines out on one side, the 707 struggled to maintain altitude, let alone execute a turn. It was losing height rapidly. Inside the cockpit, the crew fought for control, but the aircraft was descending into the darkness outside the airport's perimeter. Below them was the sprawling, densely populated neighborhood of São José, a slum where thousands of people were sleeping in their homes, completely unaware of the disaster unfolding directly above them. The pilot's view would have been a sea of scattered lights, getting closer and closer. The roaring sound of the crippled jet grew into a deafening scream as it skimmed just above the rooftops. It clipped power lines, plunging parts of the neighborhood into sudden darkness. Then it struck the treetops, the sound of splintering wood mixing with the straining engines. At 3 minutes past midnight, just 6 minutes after taking off, Transbrasil Flight 801 slammed into the heart of the São José neighborhood. The impact was catastrophic. The aircraft, still loaded with fuel, exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the night sky for miles. The explosion and the ensuing inferno tore through the community, destroying around 80 homes built from simple wood and tin. The crash site was a scene of utter devastation. All 6 people on board the aircraft were killed instantly. On the ground, the tragedy was even more widespread. The fiery wreckage carved a path of destruction, and in the chaos that followed, the death toll among the residents began to rise. Initial reports were confused, but it soon became clear that at least 19 people on the ground had lost their lives, with some sources putting the final count as high as 25. Hundreds more were left injured and homeless. Emergency services rushed to the scene, but the narrow streets and the intensity of the fire made their efforts incredibly difficult. For the residents of São José, it was a night of unimaginable terror. They had been woken by a sound like an earthquake, followed by an explosion that flattened their homes. Survivors described running for their lives as a wall of fire consumed everything around them. The once familiar streets were now a burning, debris-strewn wasteland. The investigation into the crash began almost immediately. The primary question was what could have caused 2 engines on the same wing to fail almost simultaneously, just moments after takeoff. The flight data and cockpit voice recorders were recovered from the wreckage, and they provided a chilling timeline of the crew's final moments. The official investigation, conducted by Brazil's Department of Civil Aviation, or DAC, pieced together the sequence of events. The analysis concluded that the initial failure was likely caused by the ingestion of foreign objects into the engines. Given the location and time of day, the most probable culprits were birds. A flock of birds sucked into the engines during the critical takeoff phase could have caused catastrophic damage. The first engine, number 3, caught fire. Just seconds later, Debris from the disintegrating first engine may have been ingested by the adjacent engine, number 4, causing it to fail as well. The crew was faced with a nightmare scenario, a rapid, uncontained double-engine failure. But the investigation revealed another critical factor. In the confusion of the emergency, the crew retracted the landing gear. This is a standard procedure after takeoff to reduce drag, but in this specific situation, it was a fatal mistake. With the landing gear down, the aircraft might have had a slim chance of making a controlled, albeit rough, landing straight ahead or on the remaining runway. The gear could have absorbed some of the impact. But with the gear retracted, the aircraft had no way to cushion a landing and was aerodynamically clean, making it more sensitive to the massive drag and asymmetric thrust caused by the two dead engines. The 21-year-old Boeing 707, weighed down by its heavy cargo and with half its power gone from one side, simply couldn't stay in the air. The combination of the double engine failure and the premature gear retraction left the pilots with no viable options. They were too low, too heavy, and had too little time to recover. The left turn they initiated only worsened the situation, causing the aircraft to lose even more precious altitude and speed, leading directly to the stall and crash. The tragic crash of Transbrasil Flight 801 served as a stark wake-up call. It highlighted significant safety issues, particularly concerning bird strike risks at Manaus Airport, which is situated deep within the Amazon rainforest. The accident prompted improvements in wildlife management and bird control procedures at airports across Brazil. It also underscored the immense dangers of night cargo operations, where emergencies at low altitudes over populated areas leave almost no margin for error. For the city of Manaus and the community of São José, the crash left a deep and lasting scar. It remains one of the deadliest aviation disasters in the history of the Amazon region, a tragic reminder of how a few critical seconds and a cascade of unforeseen events can lead to devastating consequences. The memory of the flight, and the lives lost both in the air and on the ground, endures as a somber chapter in aviation history. Thank you for watching. If you found this story informative, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth aviation stories.